so got through capitalism, and now we're going to talk today 5 basic concepts of democracy. Before we get into that, let's talk about Friday when I'm going to be gone. Okay? Page 20. You guys got your books?
Yeah.
Okay. Page 20. This is what you're going to be working on. Okay? Now, if you notice in your book, there is a page 20, A, B, C, D, and E. Okay? You're going to use A through E, 20A through E, to fill out 20. Okay? What you will find on those pages are the Magna Carta, 1215, the English Petition of Right, 1628, and the English Bill of Rights, 1688. Okay? Today, when we finish the 5 concepts of democracy, we are done with the objective portion of the test. So this begins your essay. Your first paragraph essay is going to be discussing the influence of the British systems, constitutions, on our government. Okay, so when you read through those documents on Friday in class, you will find certain rights in those documents. So you will do a little check mark. Yep, no quartering of soldiers in your home. Check mark, that's in the Magna Carta, and it is found in number, because these are numbered, the outline. I found that in number 39. First, don't write that down because I just made that up. Okay. You following me? That's what you're gonna. Now, normally I send that home with you. I say, hey, tonight you need to read those English constitutions and fill out the chart. And then when you come back on Monday, I'm going to call you by name up to my desk, and you're going to show me your chart. Now, some of these will not be marked at all. In fact, if you have all of these rights marked, you didn't do it right, because some of them you won't find in any of these. Okay? Some you will. Now, if your chart looks like my chart, you'll get 10 out of 10. If your chart is off a little bit, you may lose a point. If your chart's way off, you may lose a couple of points. Okay? And I'll just look at that by glancing at it. Okay? You'll bring it up to me and say, here, Mr. Ebright. And I'll look at it, and then I'll put a grade in. Okay? Now, Friday, when you're here, is everybody going to be here Friday? Coach Holman will be here. And you guys can do this individually. You can work in groups if you like. Okay, doesn't matter to me. Okay, at the top of each of these constitutions is a little bit of a history. Okay, now you've had this history before in world history, and maybe even in English this year. You guys are doing some English stuff, right? English literature, Shakespeare, Hamlet. Yeah, okay. So you get a little bit of that in, have you guys talked about the Magna Carta in English? The Glorious Revolution? Okay. Well, you can read about them in the top of these, okay? So, you guys welcome to work together on that or individually on that. Just on Monday, you need to have it done. Okay? Tomorrow, so that's the first paragraph of your essay is these English documents. The second part is the colonial era. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to lecture on the colonial era. And we'll look at the formation. So the first colonists, what was the first colony in the U.S. in the New World? Jamestown, what year? This is that. Waiting on the question to be answered. Thank you. 1670. Huh? You got a lot of the right numbers in there. 1607. Okay, and then 13 years later, there was a new colony in 1620. Puritans. Plymouth Rock. Yeah, huh? Yeah. And you guys been to Jamestown or Plymouth? Okay. I've been to both. Pretty cool. Okay. Plymouth Rock, they actually have a white rock that has 1620 on it, like carved into it. It's not the original. It's like a tortoise thing. Okay. But anyhow, those people were from where? So they felt like they had those rights when they came here. You understand? The Magna Carta was written in 1215. The second English Constitution's 400 years later in 1628. So in 1628, people have been living with the rights given to them under the Magna Carta for 400 years. So the people that came in Jamestown brought with them those ideas, that they had those rights. You understand? Okay, so if you're filling out this chart and you find that right in the Magna Carta, it's assumed that you still have that right in 1628 and 1688. Follow me? So if you found trial by jury in Magna Carta, you could mark all three and not be wrong, even if it's not specifically stated in those other ones. You with me? Okay, it's assumed you don't lose these rights. You gain rights. You don't lose them. Okay. All right? Good? Okay, so that's Friday. Okay, today we're going to hit the 5 basic concepts of democracy. Okay? These are pretty commonsensical, guys. I could go over these in 5 minutes, but I'm going to take the entire hour because I'm going off the beaten path today. Okay? You may enjoy that. You may not enjoy it. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's something that is important to me, so therefore I share it with you. Okay. The first basic concept of democracy is the fundamental worth of the individual. The fundamental worth of the individual. Now, with that, guys, would you agree with this statement? Every human being has dignity. Now, you guys are in high school. So, how many kids are in your class? Like 260 or something? 80? We lose a little bit every year, you know. But start with 300 and wind up, you know, somewhere 275, 280. Okay. Do you like everybody in the senior class? There's nobody at this school that I don't like, that I know. None of my students right now do I dislike. And I say that in all seriousness. I like all of my students. All the people I work with, I like. I don't have any teachers here that I don't like. Okay. But even if you don't like somebody, they still have dignity, right? And you should try and treat people with respect. Yes, if they earn it. Now, if they don't earn respect, then you don't have to give it to them. Okay. What you can do is just ignore them. You know what I mean? Or try and avoid contact with that person. So you don't have to go through that. You know what I mean? Okay. So there's nobody that I dread seeing during the school day. Okay. Now, are there some people that might annoy me a little bit? Sure. Teachers. Some students that I don't know that are annoying in the hallway. You know what I mean? But I don't know them. So we try and uphold, and that's a Christian thing as well, right? Right? Upholding people's dignity. Okay. So, yeah, not too much with that. Now, I mentioned this the other day. Can you subvert the will of one person for the will of many people in this country? Yeah, it happens all the time. I brought up the idea of taxes, right? Like, I don't want to pay more in taxes, but if the majority of people want us to pay more in taxes, then you're subverting my will. That's our social contract. Okay, and our social contract says that most decisions are made by majority rule. Okay, so I have to live with that. Okay, now I can try and change hearts and minds and say, no, guys, lower taxes is better. Okay, trickle down economics or supply side economics works. Okay, and you could counter that and say, no, Mr. Ebright, it doesn't trickle down, and people at the bottom don't benefit from tax cuts for the wealthy. Okay, we could have that argument. All right, so that one's pretty simple. Okay, the second basic concept of democracy is equality of all persons. Equality of all persons. This pen stinks. Guys, words are important. Okay, language we use is important. Okay, Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence writes, all men are created equal, right? Endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, right? In 1776, when those words were written, were we all equal? No. No. In 1776, when those were written, there was one abolitionist society in the United States. It had 24 people. "90 years later, most of the North in this country believed in abolition. Yes? It took 90 years. Yes? People don't change overnight. Now, one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is this. When he was discussing the Declaration of Independence, okay, he described it as a promissory note, that it was a promise that we would have to try and fulfill. Okay, so it's been roughly 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. Okay, have we fulfilled that statement that all men are created equal in this country? Well, that's up for debate. Okay. In 1861 to 1865, we had the Civil War. In 1866, we passed the 14th Amendment, right? Which I've already discussed in this class once or twice, and will continue to, that said we have this: equal protection under the law for all citizens. That was 1866. A year later, in 1867, did we actually have equal protection under the law for all citizens? No. 100 years later, in 1964, which would be 97 years later, we passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. 190 some years after the Declaration. Again, putting to law the practice of all men are created equal. Yes? So in 1965, a year after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, did we have all men are created equal in this society? Not yet, right? And now it's 2023. We there? Are we there? We're not perfect, are we? Are we better off than we were in 1776, 1865, 1964? Yeah, we're in a lot better place at fulfilling that promissory note that Dr. King talked about, right? Yeah. Because we're not perfect, and we're still trying to fulfill that, we as a society try to promote this idea, equality of opportunity, okay, for all citizens. Now, the number one way we do that, of course, is through free public education. Okay, so the best way to provide opportunity for people is through education. Okay. Now, what each individual does with that opportunity is up to them. But still then, not everybody has an equal opportunity. I was talking to a student first hour when she came in, and I asked her where she wanted to go to college, and she wanted to go out of state. She had her eyes set on a school in Tennessee and one in South Carolina. She goes, but I don't know if I can go because it's out of state and it's very expensive. And she talked about getting student loans, you know, and what that means. But other students in my first hour may have parents with the ability and willingness to pay for school for their kids. Like my kids. Like we're paying for their school. They will not have student loan debt. But not all of you have that opportunity. You see? Okay. Now, if you got scholarships for some of the things you did with your opportunity in education, that might make it a little bit easier. Okay. Emma, have you started filling out applications early, right? Do you have where do you want to go to school? Okay. You'll get in. And you probably, I don't know how they do scholarships at KU. They don't have, I mean, they might have some big ones. Is there a big one like you're going after? Or?
I was just trying merit scholarships.
Yeah. Like Newman has the presidential scholarship, you know, and it pays for quite a bit of the school. I don't know how much KU does on that end. Lily, you know, and she went to this Rose Holman Institute, you know, they have some merit scholarships, but they're not huge, you know. And then some, I mean, like if you went to applied at some colleges, if you didn't want to go to KU, you might get all of your school paid for. But some of that depends on ACT, and I know they're phasing out the ACT, SAT scores, which is insane to me, by the way. Guys, we have people in this school with 3.5 GPAs that are in the bottom half of the class. You know what I mean? So what really separates somebody with a 4.27469 and a 4.0 that didn't take any honors classes? You know what I mean? You know what separates you? Is the ACT. And I'm saying that from someone that took the SAT and got really low scores, okay? I have two kids. I have one, my son, and one, my daughter, have totally different aptitudes. You understand? Now, their GPAs were about 1.33, you know, apart. Well, my son graduated here with a 2.97. Atta boy, Jack. Better than your old man. Okay? But like he was in the bottom third of his class. Are we inflating grades here? What's going on? Used to have 93 to get an A. When they voted whether to change that, I voted no. Don't change it. Keep it at 93. You're lowering the standards. But then I was a parent. And then I understood scholarships and you know what I mean? So I still think we should make it more difficult. It raises everybody. You have higher standards. We have higher standards than the public schools, right? Okay. But still, are you elite? Or you just have higher standards? Do we want to be elite? Do we want to be great? We just want to be really good. I want to be great. Sorry. This is not what I meant to talk about today. Okay. So, we try and do this. Okay. Things like affirmative action, right? We talked about affirmative action. Yes? For minorities. Okay. So, there are certain things we do to try and create this. Okay. Whether you agree with all of those or not. Okay. Now, what does this mean? So no matter how talented you are or how hard you work, we all wind up in the same place. Yes? That's equality of outcome. That's what this is. Yes? Okay. Are there a lot of people in this country today that believe in this? This word is used a lot. And the meaning in 2023 of this word generally is used to push this. Okay? Now, when you talk about Marxism, Marxism is a philosophy of the class system, right? It's an economic theory. Communism is an economic theory, okay? But there's also something called cultural Marxism, okay? I'm going to open this can of worms today, all right? And I just want you to keep an open mind. And I'm choosing my words very carefully here, guys, okay? We're at an interesting point in American history right now. We have come closer to fulfilling the dream that Dr. King had. That one day my children will be judged on the content of their character and not on the color of their skin. We've all heard those words. Those are the words of the civil rights movement. Okay? Things are changing. We've come close to trying to achieve that. And then there's a pivot. Our system was created, our social contract, this Constitution was created around the idea of individual rights. We talked about John Locke, natural rights of the individual. Okay? And so when you read our laws, you read our Constitution, and you read our Bill of Rights, they're speaking to the individual. Now, when you hear this word identity, a lot of times you're hearing this today when we talk about like sexual identity, how people identify, okay? That can be part of this, but it's not all of it, okay? It is this idea of how do I identify as an individual? Okay? Being careful here. Okay, so when we start talking about equality and we look at American history, okay, certain people have been oppressed in our society. Yes? Like every woman, okay, in this room, their mothers, their grandmothers, their great grandmothers face some type of oppression. Okay? I'm not saying you guys are facing oppression today. I'm not saying that at all. Okay? But in the past, that has happened, occurred. Okay? Some of you in this room have been victimized more than others. Okay? And I brought up this idea of what's called critical race theory the other day. Did I bring it up in here? Okay. So critical race theory is a legitimate topic. It's a legitimate thing taught in law schools especially, but history as well. And so if you study history in college, this is something that is now being taught. Okay? Critical race theory. So as a human being sitting in this room, living in the United States, some groups have been oppressed more than others. Okay? So look around the room, tell me who has been oppressed the most in this room. And if you're looking at Adrian, you're wrong.
Yeah, he's a man. I'm a man. He's a man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay? Is your race your identity? Is your gender your identity? Is your religion your identity? You ever heard this thing like God, family, country? God, country, family. You ever heard these things? Okay. What's number one for you? Is number one for you? I identify as this. I identify as this. That should be a 1. I identify as this. I identify as this. That's the most important identity I have. And because that's the most important identity I have, that's what I focus on in life. So when you talk about identity politics, okay, it's a group thing. Okay, so I am this, therefore I am a victim. And we need to create this because I am a victim. You see how cultural Marxism can play a role here. Okay? If we identify as this, a human being, what was the first basic concept of democracy? The individual. Okay? Is this my most important identity? You see. Okay, now guys, I'm not a sociologist. I'm a history teacher, I'm a government teacher, I'm a human being. Okay? I'm white and I'm male. Okay? So it's hard for me to give this talk and have any credibility. You understand? But I am who I am. And I care about all of you. You know that, right? You all know I care about you. I got some new students that I haven't had very long, but you guys that had me last, you guys know I care about you. Okay? So listen, what unites us? Does this divide us or make us closer? What if we're talking about 2023, things are way better than they've ever been before. Are there still bigots and racists out there? Yeah, those people suck. Okay? But most of us aren't. So can we celebrate how far we've come, the accomplishments that we made, and move forward together? Or do we get into groupthink of victims and oppressors which divide us? Dr. King, I think, would roll over in his grave over this stuff. Because we are not ignoring our race, we're focusing on it. That becomes the main focus, which tends to divide us. You guys know what homogeneous means? In a scientific term, what does it mean? All from the same what? Or substance, right? All from the same stuff, substance. Okay, in a sense, as human beings, we're homogeneous, right? But if you go to a country like Norway, most of the people look the same. Yes? They're homogeneous in a sense. Not totally, not near as diverse as we are, right? We are the most diverse country on the planet. Go to Japan. Very homogeneous. Very few people that are not Japanese living in Japan. Okay? 23andMe, like, we all got different stuff in us. Right? We are mutts. All of us. We're all mutts. We share that in common. Right? Can we go with the commonalities here? So let me just, now guys, this is a little bit cheesy. A little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Hallmark Channel-ish. What's the word I'm looking for?
Cringy.
No, not cringy. It's romantic. Okay? What were you again? Sappy. Yeah, that worked. Let me just throw this at you, okay? All of us, all of our ancestors came from somewhere else. Even if you have quite a bit of Native American blood in you, the birth of man, as far as we know, did not take place in North America. Right? So even the Native Americans came from somewhere else to begin with. Yes? So we all came from somewhere else. Now, we all got here in different ways. But generally, when you leave your homeland, your home country, and leave everything behind, your family, your assets, your things behind, because you can only take with you so much. You're taking a risk, right? So like your family took a risk to get here. Your family took a risk to get here. Yours, when you talk to the Vietnamese students, right? Their families, many of them were boat people, right? That's taking a risk. My people were boat people too. My people came across the Atlantic in the 1740s. Was that a guaranteed safe passage across the Atlantic in the 1740s? No, that's a risk. If you're a Cuban American and you got here on a raft to the Florida Keys, or you crossed the Rio Grande, or climbed over a fence, or something like that, everybody had to take some type of risk to get here. all share that in common. That's in our DNA. That's what makes us the same. Benjamin Franklin talked about this. He talked about we are a different race of people. Look at the Australians. Now, these people were mostly British, right? Like at the beginning, most of us were British. But it was a penal colony, right? Like they emptied their jails and sent these people to this island, Australia. So the offspring of these people are offspring of criminals, many of them. And some of the people that were sent here to places like Georgia and Maryland, many of them Irish, were sent here, emptying the jails as well. There were penal colonies in Georgia and Maryland, okay? So what stereotypes do we give the Irish?
Yes.
They bomb cars.
Are you saying they're violent? Fiery? Fiery? You ever hear that about the Irish? Now, the Irish that were brought here, many of them were criminals, and they were given the opportunity to leave jail and come to the New World and work for their freedom. You may be a descendant of that. We're a different race, guys. Can we focus on the commonalities that we have instead of the differences that we have? It's a worldview, guys, but nobody talks about it. All we talk about is division. What's wrong with our country? What's wrong with our country? That's what we focus on. We don't focus on what unites us. I mean, if we're teaching this in schools, and we use this for power, to get power, to win elections, pitting ourselves against each other, we're tearing at the fabric of America. If we don't learn the truth about our country in our public schools, about the influence of God and so forth, we lose the fabric, the principles. This is big. Now, guys, you're Catholic. I'm Protestant. There is a different view religiously that we share on this. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, the Protestant work ethic. It's a real thing. Like people, like my family, and I know this is stereotyping a little bit, but guys, like you grow up, you leave the nest, and you go. You just go. I moved away from my family. My wife moved away from her family. My sister moved away from the family. My brother-in-law moved away from the family. They just went and got it. Go get it. Catholics have more of a community view. Am I right? Okay. That's why I bring up Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a Frenchman, came to the New World and studied early America. And he put a mirror up and showed us a look at ourselves, who we are as Americans. Now, as we have immigration and culture changes with immigration, right? Every culture of immigration brings in different, and it changes the whole culture. You know what I mean? So by being around Catholics for the last 25 years, it has changed my culture. It's changed my wife's culture because of what we're exposed to with you guys. It really has. It changes my worldview some. Okay? So, and that's a good thing, right? Exposing other to different things. And you hope that the best parts of our cultures get passed on to the next generation. Okay? And the bad things about our cultures get washed away. Okay? If we're going to do identity politics, I want you to look at this. We're going to divide the country up by identity, on race. What race of Americans has the highest standard of living over any other race? Now, let me start with this. The average standard of living, the average median income in the United States is $56,000. What race of Americans has the highest standard of living? They are of Asian descent, which would be Indian Americans. Okay, Indian Americans have a median income of over $100,000. Would you consider Indian Americans to be brown people? Number two, Asian. Okay, I mean, you can divide that up. Yeah, you can divide up different Asian groups. And Chinese would be near the top. But Asians, as in general, have the second highest standard of living. And it's close to $90,000. Then come Caucasians. Then come Hispanics. And then come African Americans. Okay. Culture, opportunity. Okay. I think if you have the focus being on identity and you're pushing for this, you're going to move in that desired outcome. Okay. If you look at the individual and you focus on the individual, I think you have a better opportunity to achieve this than this. But this is where we're at, guys. This is kind of how I, as a 54-year-old who, pays attention to the news, pays attention to what's going on in the world, what's going on in this country. This is what I'm seeing. Okay. It's the difference between the melting pot and the salad bowl approach. Okay. Those of us that believe in God would probably list that first as our identity. We are Christians. Some of you may put up there, I am a daughter. I'm a son. I'm a father. Family. Okay. I don't know how I handled that. I just wanted to kind of bring it up. I would like to see us focus on our similarities, what we have in common, and what we have opposite. And again, my credibility lacks because of who I am, who you may identify me as a white male. But if you identify me as a Christian, as a brother of yours, then you can look past my race and my gender. You know what I mean? You see me as another human being that loves you, right? So I would like to see us much more united in this country rather than divided. And I think that we are seeing this being pushed in our colleges. And as it goes into our colleges, it disseminates into, and when you go to KU, you're going to be hit hard with it. Okay. Now, what do you want to study, Emma? Okay. Yeah. So hopefully not too much in the engineering department. Hopefully you won't get too much of this in the engineering department. Okay. But in some of your undergrad work, you'll be hit with it. Okay. And, if you bring up issues that are important to Catholics, if they bring those up and talk about how bigoted Catholics are, you'll have to make a decision. You're either gonna keep your mouth shut, grin and bear it, or challenge the professor and their ideas. Okay? Now, your sister, Father Hoffman, Father Drew, yeah, Father Drew, talked about your sister at K-State and how she spoke up. Yeah.
Speaks up all the time.
How'd that turn out? Turn out okay?
Yeah, I think so. She had like, it was like every one of her English classes. She did it every year, and I'm like, go you, all right? I mean, like, I don't really know what to say to that.
She's a brave soul.
She's not afraid to speak her mind.
Yeah. I mean, you just want to get the A and move on, right?
Yeah.
Or you're going to challenge the orthodoxy of the university system. You know what I mean? It takes some.
Yeah, I think the one that she got really heated in, I think she got like transferred out of it.
Okay.
But yeah.
It's interesting stuff. Okay. All right. Emma, you will be challenged there for sure. But that's okay. All right. How much time do I have? How many? Gosh. Majority rules, minority rights. Majority rules, minority rights is number 3. These are easy. I just got off topic on them. Guys, most decisions are made by a majority, right? Is the majority always right? No, but it is the decision that is the most pleasing to the most people at the time. Minority rights. My white people. Right now, we are a majority of the U.S. population. Soon, we will be a plurality, not 51%, but the most. And then one day, Adrian is going to be the majority. And we are going to be the minority. And so if we mistreat minorities today, white people, what's likely to happen to us when we're no longer the majority? Something to think about, right? Okay, real quick. The 4th is necessity of compromise. By the way, Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, is meeting with President Biden today over the debt ceiling. Will there be a compromise? Cut a little spending, we'll raise the debt ceiling. You don't want to cut any spending, we won't raise the debt ceiling, we'll shut down the government. And then they'll have a fight in the media about whose fault it is, the Democrats or the Republicans, and who usually wins that fight? Democrats, because they control the media. Okay. Last one. Individual freedom. Individual freedom. Now, if you have unlimited freedom, you have what? What? Anarchy. Unlimited freedom would be anarchy. So our social contract creates some limits on it, right? Now, real quick, 2 good quotes before you leave. Oliver Wendell Holmes, Supreme Court Justice. The right of me to swing my fist. You don't need to know this quote for the test. The right of me to swing my fist ends where your nose begins. And then JFK said this. He said, the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. So if I say, you can't say that, that's hate speech, and I take away your speech, then my speech begins to be threatened. Yes? Okay. Sorry I rushed through those last 3. That'll be a listing question on the test. So you'll just need to list the five basic concepts. You won't have to detail it. Thanks for going down that sappy road with